Okay, we're back in the garage working on our Mk7 Volkswagen GTI project car, and today we're going to be putting a bigger rear sway bar on the car. Now, before we do that though, I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of what changing the size of a sway bar on a car can do and why it's going to, at least theoretically, help our GTI on track. And while most of this video is going to deal with sway bars in the context of a front-wheel drive track car, it's fairly universal advice that you can apply to any car. So before we talk about the sway bar on our GTI though, I wanted to talk about this Miata antenna, which yes, it's off our old Lemons car, but it's just a piece of spring steel, and it's a good way to start talking about how sway bars work. So I'll put this in the vise here, grab the other end with a pair of vice grips here, and all I want to illustrate here is that this is just a big spring. When you twist it, it bounces back, just like a coil spring on the car, except it's working rotationally here, and it springs back. So why does this matter? Because an anti-roll bar is basically just a big spring. Let's take that to the next logical leap and go ahead and bend it into the shape of a basic sway bar. And I went ahead and did that here. So as you can see, we have a straight part, and then we have two levers on each end. So I'll turn it so you can see it, and when you twist one lever, it tries to spring back here. So we've gotten the basic shape of a sway bar in a car. Let's go ahead and get sway bar bushings now. And I've just got two little nuts here, so I can go ahead and slip them on like this. And now we have an easy way for our sway bar to rotate. So I can put that in the vise. So now that I've installed kind of our little Miata antenna sway bar onto the bench here, you can really start to see how it works in a car. So we still have our two levers, we still have the actual springy part of the bar, and when you move one up or down, see, you can twist and you're getting that same spring action. So why do we put these on cars? What does this do for suspension? So if you connect each side of the sway bar to the suspension, the spring rate is basically 0 when both wheels are moving at the same time. But when one wheel tries to move while the other doesn't, it creates resistance. So we call this roll resistance in a car. And basically a sway bar is one of the tuning tools in a suspension system to change the roll resistance at each end. So what's the benefit of having this third spring in the rear suspension that's only acting on body roll? Couple different reasons to do this. First of all, it lets you change roll resistance independently of spring rate. So where you might optimize spring rate to help put power down or to go over bumps in the road, this is just another tuning tool to make a car faster or more comfortable. Okay, so I've talked about my little bench test sway bar that's just a big square here. How do we actually package that into a car? And that's when you start to get sway bars like this front bar from 034 Motorsport, designed to fit our GTI. And you can see it's got a couple of extra little bins in there just to go around different parts of the car. But even though this is bent and has some extra, kind of features, it's still basically a straight bar with two levers on each end, and it will act like that. Next, I want to talk about what it does to the car and what specifically going bigger in the rear sway bar can do to a front-wheel drive car. So the first thing it's going to do to our GTI is it's going to help control body roll. Body roll is basically when the body of a car leans over in a corner. Everybody's felt it when they've taken a corner at any speed. Body roll is not really something you want on a racetrack normally because body roll leads to dynamic camber change, especially on our GTI. So dynamic camber change is basically a gain or loss of negative camber when a suspension cycles through its range of motion, and we want to lose as little negative camber as possible on our GTI, especially up front with the struts. So by putting a stiffer rear sway bar on our GTI, it should reduce body roll, which should reduce dynamic negative camber loss, which should give the tires more traction to work with. But that's not the main reason we're doing it. Sure, it controls body roll, which is nice. We're actually trying to increase the rear roll stiffness in the back of our GTI. Why do you want to increase rear roll stiffness on a track car, especially a front-wheel drive track car? Because it understeers like a pig right now. Those camber plates we put up front definitely helped. It does have more front grip, but the car is still kind of an understeering, nose-heavy car. So we would like the car to handle more neutrally or even bias towards oversteer to help it turn in and to help keep that front end from washing out on every corner. So increasing the rear roll stiffness can be a good tool to do that. Roll stiffness changes at one end of the car are a way to shift the balance of load in a corner between the front and rear. So for our GTI, by increasing the rear roll stiffness, we should be able to force the rear of the car to take more of the cornering load, which forces the front of the car to take less of the cornering load. In theory, that biases it more towards oversteer than towards understeer and should help it handle better. Let's talk a little bit more about the parts that surround a sway bar, or at least that should whenever you install one on your car. As you can see here on my little Miata antenna model again, it has absolutely no drag from the sway bar bushings, these two nuts here. And that's what you want. You want the sway bar to be able to float around completely free of any resistance or binding when it's in the car, when it's not connected to the suspension. That's not usually what happens with stock bushings. They're rubber, they tend to bind, they're not lubricated that well. So we're going to go ahead and put a set of 034 Motorsport urethane rear sway bar bushings on the car. And these are greasable. They're also a little stiffer. So in theory, these should let the sway bar move up and down without any binding or extra spring rate introduced. And the urethane should mean that the entire bar twists around less and has less deflection. Again, we're trying to isolate all of the force into that sprung part of the bar to keep things predictable. Oh, we're also going to be putting on adjustable end links. End links connect the sway bar to the suspension. These are basically just a solid rod that translates motion from the wheel into motion at the sway bar. We put adjustable end links on wherever possible because you don't want the sway bar to be pushing on the suspension when it's just at static ride height at rest when both wheels are in the same spot. And by being able to adjust the length of these individually, we can make sure that the sway bar isn't biased towards one side of the car or another, or starting to press on the suspension when the car is just parked. These are also a handy tool you can use sometimes when you're corner weighting, that sort of thing, but that's pretty advanced. I'm not going to get into that on this project. I should talk about the downsides, and the downsides are a loss of compliance. So anytime you're increasing spring rates anywhere in a suspension, you are reducing the amount of compliance in the car and the ability of the tire to press itself over little bumps and changes in the asphalt, that sort of thing. So we think the upsides drastically outweigh the downsides here. We think that this is going to make the car faster. We don't think it's going to have really any effect on its daily driver, comfort, potential, etc. But it's worth noting that anytime you increase spring rate, you reduce compliance. So the only thing left to do is put it on and go to the racetrack. So if you like this video, please make sure you like and subscribe. Until next time, I'll see you at the track.
Support brands who support Grassroots Motorsports. Get your chemical solutions from CRC Industries. To learn more, visit crcindustries.com. Want to see more content like this? Make sure to hit that subscribe button and like this video. And for more information, visit us online at grassrootsmotorsports.com.